Sunday, 4/19. The garden's looking pretty. It's probably like 48, 50 degrees right now. Asparagus going up like nobody's business. Got plenty of cover crop in the spots where the cannabis is going to show up. You'll see all sorts of clover, maybe some partridge pea. There's some purple clover that's looking real pretty. You can tell it's purple clover by the leaf structure and that little vine friend. But today we're going to chat a little bit about the compost that we touched on yesterday. Basically, in general, the idea of compost is to take a bunch of material from the land that is either freshly dead or has been dead for some time, and returning it back to the land in a form of concentration in a specific spot, such that the microorganisms, all the way from isopods down to any sort of single-celled organism like microbes, are able to break down that food, essentially mostly by eating it. And I say food because most of it starts as food scraps. So, like we talked about yesterday, in this particular composter, you'll see a bunch of dead hydrangeas, dead floral components from indigenous species. You'll see a bunch of brown material from the trees and what they drop. You'll also see a bunch of kitchen scraps and the mold that they're picking up, which is what we want. That means that bacteria is working. But essentially, all these microorganisms break down the dead material and turn it into its concentrated nutrient forms. So that can look like nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, any of the different things that we need, a whole bunch of different other things as well. But it also, most importantly, allows these species to multiply. And that's most important when it comes to the microbes, because a lot of the times, these are the species that are delivering the nutrients and the goodness throughout the soil to the rhizosphere, which is the fancy classist word for the root system. Different root systems of plants are working together to share nutrients, also to hold one another and give pathways for these different species like microbes and even things as large as worms to make their way throughout the soil and work together to make sure everybody in the soil is happy. Kind of like any form of sentience, and any ecosystem, especially any micro-ecosystem, you'll look inside healthy indigenous soil and you'll find that there's all sorts of friends inside holding on to each other and making sure that everybody has what they need. So yeah, in this one, once again, the beginning of the breakdown, the start of the decomposition. And then in this one, the finality of the decomposition, creating what we use as compost. Could be used as a top dress, and then all the goodness will make its way down into the soil. Could also be used in the way that we looked at it yesterday, the compost tea. Some people just immediately make the assumption, it's the morning for me, so I'm a little out of it, that the point of a compost tea is to make like a supercharged, nutrient-dense compost. We're going to take a look at the onion and the shallots while we're talking about this. And that's not really it. We're not really looking to make a nutrient-dense compost. That doesn't really make sense. For there to be a higher nutrient density, there would have to somehow be an exponential factor within the nutrients that the compost that you're putting into the tea goes through. That doesn't really happen while the tea is aerating. You'll notice that when we take a look at the tea, it's bubbling with an air pump. The idea with that, the aeration, is to create and expose all of the surface area of the compost that we put into the compost tea. The water and the traveling of the air throughout the water allows the compost to move around and allows the microbes then with the highest level of surface area to explore throughout the compost that they traveled into the water with, will then be able to multiply at the highest rate. So what we're really looking for in that instance, and what the real point of a compost tea is, something that you can learn more about if you look up the soil food web and learn genuinely any indigenous forms of culinary or any other agricultural planting, we'll find that microorganism health is what's most important to the health of the soil, because when everybody's working together, everybody's happy, and that includes the plant, whatever the plant may be. So yeah, using that aeration, we're able to allow the microbes and other microbiology to multiply. This is particularly useful for treating soil that has been industrialized for quite some time, treating soil that's been defeated by runoff for a while, treating soil that has existed in, like we see in this semi-suburban cracker-looking Chicagoland neighborhood, which, let's be real, actually in Chicago, but kind of hard to tell. Kind of looks like they don't want to be in Chicago, but okay. But yeah, so in a shitty soil like what we got out front, it's important to restore the microbe population and try and make sure that the microecosystem within that soil is happy. And the only way that we can do that is if there's enough friends of each different kind, of the different sizes and types of microorganisms to work with and decompose and deliver the nutrients. All of this sentience stuff, all of this life stuff, it's all really just about sharing with and loving one another. There's a lot that could be seen and felt and wondered and loved through, should we just find out what the sentience around us needs and do that by listening. That's step one. And that includes every form of sentience. Then when we listen, maybe we'll be a little bit less fearful and start to be able to care about one another and find the fun and well-being in that, kind of like you'll see if you dig through the soil at all. But yeah, just a little bit on compost tea, compost, and a bit about how that affects the rhizosphere and some ideas with that. A healthy soil, especially in the indigenous or the regenerative indigenous sense, will not only make healthy outputs, like all of these delicious varieties you see coming up, healthy ecosystems also bring for a life of well-being, a healthier life, if you will. So yeah, let's listen to one another, find out what we need, and work together to build the bonds such that those of us who do live in fear and those of us who do want to force violence on reality through that fear, we don't need to be dealing with them anymore. And we can create infrastructure beyond their forms of capital. But yeah, any questions, just let me know. Once again, 419, Collective Autonomy, much love. We're gonna move beyond this, this bullshit that's existed our entire lives. And we're gonna do it with this. Much love. Just as a quick addendum, literally any pile of good dirt can turn into a compost pile. Because essentially, if there's enough goodness in there, goodness meaning those different bits we talked about of the different inputs that we talked about in the bins over here, then we'll be able to have that soil breakdown. As you can see, it's looking delicious in there. Not any friends we can see because it's a little cold, but this stuff smells incredible. Whole lots of different types of brown material in here. I could tell that there's been a ton of decomposition because of the different shapes and the feeling inside. I can see the wood. I can already see some different friends in here. So yeah. That sort of decomposition, that sort of concentration or nutrient regenerative work that the microecosystem and the microbiology are doing pretty much happens in any soil. We're just trying to make it really happen with the good stuff that we know makes that work in a compost. So yeah, any questions, let me know. Yeah, hope everyone has a beautiful day. I'm going to paraphrase Fred Hampton here and rip off Jared Ball, Dr. Jared Ball, Myth of Black Buying Power, by saying, peace for those who are willing to fight for it. And that's Fred Hampton. You should know him, especially if you're from Chicago. Peace for those who are willing to fight for it.